Now, anytime a body is found on any of the barrier islands off of the southeast side of Long Island, they are or somebody goes missing, they are immediately connected to the Long Island serial killer. And there are so many that are immediately discovered what actually happened and pulled back off. Recently, in the last year or two, there have been at least 4 women's bodies that have been found, whether whole or partial, who the investigators are still unclear if they are connected or are not connected. And that's, again, and then there's other ones that have gone missing and been found, and then it was figured out what happened, and they're definitely not related. But a lot of women seem to be dying in this area. So,
or at least their bodies are dumped in this area.
Yes,
yeah,
that is a very good point to make.
Yeah, and so I not to jump the gun, could be all kinds of different killers out there.
Well, Joe's already putting out a theory, so we should probably get into theories.
You can do the theories if you want.
So theory number one. Theory number one is that this is all the work of a single serial killer.
Yeah, I mean okay. So just to clarify, the dismembered bodies were found in relatively close proximity to the Burlap ones, right? They were on the same road.
Yeah. Well, there's only one road on that island, actually.
Okay, but I mean, with pretty close to each other, right?
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah, but
but you always hear this is all the work of a single killer, and it is a prostitute-obsessed serial killer who loves to use Oak Island as their dumping ground.
Well, and this would be one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the United States, wouldn't it?
Not
There's
really,
been some people who racked up some higher numbers.
If you take the top, that's the highest number I've heard for this one is 17. That's,
confirmed.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily done by the same person.
Well, yeah, and there's guys like BTK. He took big gaps, but he did quite a few. The Green River Killer did a bunch.
Okay.
Gacy had quite a few people under his house.
Yeah, Dahmer. How many did Dahmer kill?
I don't know how many he ate.
I know, that's scary. You know what scares me about him is that he worked at a chocolate factory. Yeah.
Can we stop this,
please?
Okay, so logically speaking, it makes sense to think that it's just a single killer. They've got a thing for prostitutes, and they found this great place to dump all the bodies. We've just talked about, we've listed off some people. Gary Ridgway, who was the Green River Killer here in the Pacific Northwest, he dumped all his bodies in the same place all the time. There's 2 guys. There's Robert Shulman and Joel Rifkin. They're famous examples, and they were actually they're local to the area. They're in New York.
Yeah, but Rifkin was in jail by 1993, wasn't he?
Thank you for just stepping all over that. Good job, Joe.
All right.
No, we're going to talk about that in just a second. Now, Ridgway, I mean, I mentioned him as an example. He's by no means a viable candidate.
No.
He's on the wrong side of the frickin' country.
People can travel. There's things as airplanes.
Yeah, but he was
though.
very, very prolific in the Washington area. But Shulman and Rifkin are always called possibilities. Typically, they were only connected to the older bodies, and that is because, as Joe said, that there's some, being in jail and arrested issues. Shulman worked 12 miles away from where the bodies were found. Rifkin lived 10 miles away from where they were found. But Shulman was arrested in 96 and then executed in 2006, and Rifkin began his 203-year prison sentence in 1994.
Might be too short.
Yeah, I think they went a little light on him, but that's just me.
Yeah, I agree.
But since we're in this theory, let's talk about a couple of things that are pointed out, and we can kind of talk about it if you want. These are things that are always pointed to. People always say that the killer had to have intimate knowledge of the area to know where to dump the bodies.
I don't know.
It's kind of a pull-off on the road.
Yeah.
Ocean Parkway is the main road that runs the length of the island, which it's 2 lanes in each direction with the, what is it when you call the natural median between them when it's scrub brush and grass, so it's not 4 lanes connected, but 2 lanes. Anyway.
A median. They call it a median.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if a median actually meant the stupid concrete K-rails or
Anything delineating the 2 is a median.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that you would have had to have an intimate knowledge
I
because
agree,
they're
Joe.
pretty geographically, they're pretty damn simple.
Yeah, and,
They
well,
really
and
are.
you'll also hear people say, well, if he didn't live on the island, people say it had to be a resident of the island. But if it wasn't a resident of the island, then they had to at least spend some time, say, summering there. So now they're saying it's a summering tourist who stays in that area.
I feel like, okay, so I'm going to admit something, and I'm going to say that it's because we do this podcast, but maybe not. But do you guys ever just drive through an area and you go, oh, crap, you could totally drive a body there?
Oh, yeah.
No,
All
but
the
I
time.
have looked off and go, I wonder what's down that little access road.
And you can do that one time, right? And if you're a serial killer,
You could
maybe
stop.
You stop and you think, oh yeah, no, this would totally be a good spot. You only have to go past there once, right? You don't have to have been there. You don't have to live there. You don't have to be summering there every summer since boyhood. You don't like any of that stuff.
And it's very easy to do that kind of stuff and not get in trouble. There's weird little spots on the road between my house and the main drag, and I've had to pull off. And when I pulled off into this weird gravel area, I realized that there was another road that led away. I was like, oh, well, that's strange. Well, if somebody had come up and said, hey, what are you doing? This is railroad property, which I realized by the sign that I read once I was stopped. I said, I'm sorry, I stopped. I'm trying to figure out where I'm at and keep going, and nobody would ever bat an eye. Okay, get
I
out
had
of
to
here.
take a piss,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to find a private place to just, take.
Yeah, I was going to open the car door and I didn't want to be facing the road.
Sorry.
So sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, there's a million things. And that's also something that they always say is that the killer had to have a vehicle, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Does make a lot of
Totally
sense.
makes sense.
Unfortunately, a lot of people have vehicles, so
They
you haven't
really
narrowed
do.
the
You
field
know
by
what
very
else
much.
is a thing, however, is rentals.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah.
You can always
Well, I doubt they were using Uber.
No,
that
not
wouldn't
at
work.
that time. But
Or Lyft.
if it were me, and again, I'm sorry to say this in this room, but I'm a small female, so like you guys can take me if you have to. But if I were trying to dispose of a body, I would rent a car.
Quick, Joe, get the trunk. We're going to shove her in.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I mean, right? I wouldn't use my own car. Why would you use your own car a bunch of times?
yeah.
You know
On
what?
the off chance that somebody sees you dumping the body,
I got to say that if I am intending to dump a body, I'm probably not going to do it in the daytime.
well, obviously.
I'm going to
No.
do it at night,
Right.
and I'm probably going to have something that is, semi-sheltered so I can pull off so I'm not blatantly sitting on the side of the road.
Sure.
But I could just pull my car off the side of the road and get out of the car, stand in the bushes, wait, knowing that, okay, if I see lights, it takes 5 minutes for those lights to get me. Run to the car, open the trunk, and drag the body away.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be some super... And then if somebody pulls up, you just stay in the bushes.
Right.
If it
And
were
then roll
me,
away.
But
Yeah.
I guess the reason I would do a rental car is not for the license plate or anything like that, but at the very least, then they
Evidence
can't
left in
say,
the trunk or the
well,
back
there's
seat or-
DNA from all these women in your car. Like, what the heck? No, there's no way to track.
There's
So
gonna
maybe
be-
they can pin one on you.
There'll be DNA. I mean, but
Or burlap.
Yeah, hopefully by the time they find you and check your credit card records and find that you rented a car, they somehow managed to track down the car. Mm-hmm. They probably had it detailed,
Yeah.
numerous times.
Oh, of course they
and
have.
all kinds of people have been in and out of that trunk, and
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
And then it's one single eyewitness saying, "Yeah, I saw a car. I think this was the license plate."
yeah.
You're,
So what?
You're out of luck.
You can always
Good
swap
luck.
plates too.
Well, and
But,
you know what?
Sorry.
And people's recollection of license plates is terrible because, like,
God.
I think I told you too. This was this summer. My wife's car got backed into in a hardware store parking lot, and some guy was standing there and watched the yo-yo that did it get out of his car, get back into his car, and drive away. And he's like, "The license plate was," and he stops, and you can see like this whole process in his head, and he spat out the license plate number, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
Because when we looked at the security video, he had one of the alphabet characters was incorrect.
Yeah, that happens
So I mean,
all the
but that is a guy who was standing in a very stable environment and then recalling it, and he was still wrong.
Who actually had a reason to look at that license number
Yeah,
plate? But,
yeah, exactly.
but
Not
yeah.
somebody driving
so
down, but
realistically, yes, there had to be a vehicle involved,
Mm-hmm.
but that person did not necessarily need to own a vehicle.
correct. The next thing that you're going to be pointed to when you do all of this is, which is actually kind of likely, is that he would have frequented prostitutes, and he could very well have been a John that these women had been with before they were killed, as in a time before or an encounter before. Because it turns out if a John finds a woman who does what he likes, he's likely to go back.
I also suspect I am not a prostitute, nor have I ever been a prostitute, nor do I know anything about the profession of being a prostitute. However, I would suspect that a prostitute is tending to be a much more on guard and have a lot more backups the first time they meet with
Or the first
John
several times.
Oh, sure.
than if they have a rapport with that person and they know he was harmless. He wanted missionary and then cried. I mean, you know, that's the sort of thing. And then you get with him a couple times. He seems like a nice guy, and you're like, you know what, Pack, you go away for a couple hours.
Yeah,
This
Mr.
guy's
Driver,
gonna pay.
he's a
It's
puppy
totally
dog.
Fine, he's a John, and then suddenly you disappear, and the driver's not gonna.
The driver has no idea because you didn't ever tell the driver what you were doing.
Well, none of these murdered women had a driver that we know. to
No,
begin
but
with,
I mean, even like.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of detail.
But you would assume that maybe it's possible that even the most careful prostitute, the first couple of times, would have somebody as kind of a security
For the first couple of
there,
times.
and then they would be used to it. So I think it is probably likely.
Yeah, well, and in the reading, to address a little bit of what both of you said, is that some of these women, they had their pimp, and a lot of times they're out doing their job, and I'm using air quotes around their job, but they're out there trying to make money, and their pimp is not with them. The pimp says, go make money, come back and let me see it, and then I will give you your cut. So they would know. Like, they're one of these ladies who's one of the burlap victims whose pimp's name I cannot think of at this moment, was like, I had no idea what she was doing. They tracked him down, and he was like, I had no idea what you're doing. She had to, that bleep, 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 had to just come back and have the money, or I beat the crap out of her. Yeah. I mean, that's the scenario that a lot of these people are in. So it's very likely that had previous encounters, and they say, not surprisingly, that obviously this guy must have had access to burlap, which is funny because if anybody has worked with burlap, you would know that it is not nearly as common as it once was.
Yeah, when I was a
burlap
kid,
is kind of hard to get a hold of anymore.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I mean, potatoes came in burlap bags and stuff like that.
Everything came in burlap.
There was a lot of that.
But now
yeah.
nylon sacks have replaced burlap. You'll used to see in like feed, like stock for animals, but now it's all vinyl, and burlap is not nearly as common anymore.
You keep directing this towards me. My confused look is because my place of work stocks burlap like the world is ending. So I mean, like for me, it would be super easy.
Yeah, there are applications, but they're more specialized now and more
frankly, you go to
finite than they
your
used to be.
Joann's fabric store and they've got burlap.
Yeah.
For
The
like
point
a
is,
couple
it
bucks a yard.
is not as common, so therefore it's easier to track down, but they haven't figured out any sources. So we've gone way on all this. I want to get to the official, so that's part of the profile. The other part of the profile here is that according to either the police or the FBI, I think it's the police, but I'm not positive, our killer is a white male, shocking, in his mid-20s to mid-40s.
That seems real low.
And
Sorry.
yeah, because of the fact that he didn't stay on the phone for very long with Amanda, which again, that was Melissa's little sister. He avoided all the detection. He must have and I'm using quotes here because this is what you see it as, quoted as, detailed or intimate knowledge of police techniques.
Yeah, or he watches TV.
Well, that's my thing, is that you watch Law and Order, CSI with a side of bones thrown in, and you know exactly how all that happens, because Hollywood has been throwing all of those police procedures at us for decades.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
So
we all know about phone call tracing.
Yeah, so that's just the silliness to me. I mean, any wannabe killer could just do that. The other problem that I have with so that's one of my problems with when they say it's this detailed, intimate knowledge is an insider or some related thing. I have problems with it. But the other thing that I have an issue with is that each set of victims appears to have possibly been killed in a different manner. So
it looks like there are at least 3 killers at work here, I would say.
Well, there's the burlap victims. We know they're strangled. The dismembered victims, we don't know how they were killed exactly, but they were dismembered.
They were
Unlike the Burlak
so
victims.
that would make me tend to think that they'd been stabbed. Or, maybe
Or
their throats had
something.
been
Well,
slit,
somebody
you
had
know?
taken the time to make the cause of death was probably something different, and likely a sharp device was involved to break the body apart into pieces to be dumped in places.
I guess my real big problem with this. Sorry, do you want to finish and all?
No. Go ahead.
My really big problem with this is that, like, if this is the same serial killer, they are de-escalating, right?
No, they're changing
going
their changing their ammo.
But
But they're also de-escalating, right?
But you're saying
are
they're
no
going
longer-
from mutilating and chopping
totally
them up?
mutilating and
Yeah.
chopping a body up to simply wrapping it in burlap and burying it in a shallow
almost in
grave.
a reverent manner.
Yeah,
Compared to
and
the
that
violence
seems
of
crazy.
dismemberment.
I mean, it's there's some psychologists could probably say, like, they're coming to terms with the childhood trauma that they had been facing when that they were like dismembering their mother figure, and now they're coming to terms with it, and so they're burying her in a shroud, right? I mean, like, okay, fine, I'm sure
Thank
could
you,
come up
Freud.
with something, but in our years of being armchair experts,
That's not the way it works.
they don't de-escalate.
No,
They
not
escalate.
typically.
And you don't go from totally mutilating and dismembering women and toddlers to wrapping women respectfully in shrouds and burying them, albeit in a shallow grave.
Yeah.
But you just don't do that. It doesn't happen.
No.
So that's my big problem with this.
Yeah, I mean it's such a wild swing. Now I will admit because somebody I know is going to say, wait. Serial killers have been known to change their disposal methods.
This is different.
Well, but it's always situational. Like I was talking about who's Gacy, the clown killer.
Yeah.
He used to bury people under his house, but he did also throw a couple people in the river. But that was situational.
Yeah.
It was the circumstances were what they were. It wasn't as if he just went, there's just too many people under my house. I'm going to start putting them in the river. No, he didn't do that at all. So
Yeah, circumstances and all. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't see actually burying the bodies under my house. That's not
No.
something I would ever
I
do.
can't see any of these
Yeah.
things.
No.
Well,
So-
the reason I don't like the single killer theory.
Oh, I don't like it at all. But
Well, if you look at the aerials of the island, alone of the islands out there, it's got 3 causeways connecting it to Long Island. And also, there's a causeway that goes to Fire Island that branches off and also goes to Oak Island.
Yep.
So, in other words, it's the most easily accessible of any of those islands, but it's still remote. And like you say, long, straight, level roads that you can see somebody coming from miles away. And so, it's an ideal place to get rid of bodies. So, I'm not surprised that a bunch of different people dumped their bodies out there. Of course they did.
This may be like super cynical of me, but I'm sure there's some network of serial killers out there, right? There's got to be some network of like dudes who like to kill people.
So
Maybe
bring
the
that up
dark
later
net.
on.
Okay, I'll bring it up later on.
Save that for I think the second to last or last theory.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to move into the next one, which Joe has obviously chosen as his favorite, which is the several unconnected serial killers or unconnected killers.
Just killers, indeed. I guess, some of these kind of look like one-offs, like the skeleton found in a bag. That's just kind of a one-off.
Seems like a one-off.
Yeah.
The 2 torsos in Manorville seem kind of like a weird isolated set.
Well-
Like there's not a whole other than the fact that these ladies were ladies of the night and may or may not have been heavy drug users at the time. And I say may or may not because some of that isn't of any consequence. But other than that is the sort of semi-commonality
I guess
between them.
For me, it's like a chicken egg.
Yeah,
You
but the
know?
point is that there's not a whole lot that syncs them up. So it's very easy to say, well, let's just say it's serial killers. Okay, let's just ignore the random kill and say it's a serial killer. Then it's very easy to say that this is 2 or 3 who just happen to go, hey, I drove down that road and I figured out this place to pull off and nobody's going to see me and I can just chuck a body.
Yeah, that's what I do. Actually, by the way, there for a while I had a great place to dump bodies. Not
Joe,
anymore, but
stop it.
We'll talk about
You're
it
going to
later.
get yourself in trouble. But the other thing is that because of the proximity to docks and stuff, I mean, it lends itself to a kind of a Dexter scenario.
Yeah.
Where there could be somebody who's killing even more, but occasionally can't get to the boat and so has to dump a body because obviously, if you haven't seen Dexter, spoiler alert, he chopped up bodies and dumped them in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's that kind of thing. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next theory. The next theory is that the culprit is Dr. Peter Hackett. If you remember when we were talking about Shannon, he's the guy that supposedly Shannon and Joe Brewer whose house they went to get more drugs.
Uh-huh.
He is, he's at least in my mind, from what I've read about him, the guy is a braggart. He talks a lot, and he likes to be the center of attention, and he has a tendency to kind of overstate his involvement in things and his responsibilities. And we're going to link this back in, but let me just explain this guy here. Hackett was an emergency response specialist, and he was involved in some pretty big operations. But like I said, he overstated his roles and responsibilities, and badly so. He did it to the media in 1996 with the TWA 800 flight, which got him into a lot of hot water with his employers.
Here's a question. He is actually a doctor?
He is. He is a doctor, and he is not like, a general practitioner or a surgeon or anything like that. He's a doctor, but he went into emergency medical situations. He really went into more of like a administrative kind of situation. So he was never operating on people. He was not for a very long time out in the field, and that's because of the fact that Hackett, as we'll talk about shortly, he's got a handicap for his mobility and for being out in the field.
Okay. And
so that's why I think that though he is a doctor, he never went out and did it in that fashion.
So has he had trouble finding or keeping employment since this whole thing became a thing?
Turns out he was pretty close to retirement.
Uh-huh.
So didn't really bother him.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that at this point he basically retired because he moved to Florida. I think he moved out of the Oak Island, the community that he lived in, and then moved to Florida. I want to say it was in 2012 or 2013. So, which he moved to Florida to retire. So it didn't really hurt him at all.
So this is actually a thing, though. There are people out there that really believe that Peter Hackett. Peter Hackett.
There are people who are so convinced that he is responsible. So here's the thing, and he did some really stupid stuff. But when it came to Shannon, because she's obviously our catalyst, and this is how he's brought into the stories, the supposed drug exchange. Well, also, he apparently called Shannon's mother, and the morning after she had run away, and said that he ran a rehab for wayward girls out of his home, and that he had taken care of her, and she had left the day after she disappeared, and she should be home. Yeah, the problem is that when he was pressed about this call, he said he never made the call, though there are phone records between Hackett and Mary, and then when the records were pulled up and shown, then he kept changing his story / recollection of why they talked on the phone.
Okay, here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Was this before they found out the police found out the whole story that she was, at the house with the prostitution and all that stuff, or was it after?
It would have been after.
It would have been after the police found out about all that stuff?
Yeah. I mean, Brewer, as soon as the cops showed up, Mary called. Because, what happens is Shannon disappears, and she doesn't come home that morning. And I believe it's later in the day. So our 911 call was at 4:50 a.m. Later that very same day, her boyfriend Alex, the guy I said she was living with, he calls PAC to find out what's going on, and then that triggers the whole chain of events for the police to get involved.
Okay, I guess because my question is like if Hackett,
but I don't know that the police were searching for her right away.
Okay.
In other words, they didn't search that very 5 a.m. or something.
Adult, right? So yeah, I guess it could have been Hackett is a friend of what's his name?
Brewer.
And Brewer says she disappeared. Like Pac said she disappeared, and Hackett's like, I'm sure she's fine. I'll call her parents.
Here's the thing, Hackett doesn't know Shannon. How the hell did he get her mother's phone number?
That's a good question.
That's why there's so much suspicion on him. Is it's the day after she's disappeared, and he's calling her mother?
Well, wait.
WTF?
No.
Well, but I guess for me, it's not so weird, right?
Or not the day after, but
Alex calls Pac, right? And Pac's like, "Oh crap! Like you don't know where she is. She didn't come home. Okay, we should do some damage control here. Brewer, can you? No, you can't. Who do we know that can corroborate that she was alive? Okay, Hackett. You guys went to Hackett's. Okay, Alex, what? How can we get a hold of the person who reported this?
I don't think it's all that suspicious.
But I'm saying is that people say, well, how the hell did he get that? People really find him suspicious, and the fact that he has access to prescription drugs. People say, well, look at this. He has supposedly made statements or offers to people that he could get them what they needed, and all they needed to do was ask. And I'll be honest with you, I'm 50-50 on whether that's real or not. Because, like I said,
it doesn't mean he's a murderer.
It doesn't.
Not really.
I mean, it does not mean he's a murderer. But people also say, well, he dumped her behind his house, because if you use the criteria that we talked about in the first theory, he lives on the island, so he would know the island very well, and obviously he has a vehicle because he drives to and from every day.
Is he a white male in his 40s?
He is a white male that is in his, at the time, late 50s or early 60s. Okay. So he's outside of the range there. The marsh or the swamp that Shannon's body was found in, it flows past the rear of his home, and then it does flow to where she was found, but to give credit, everybody that lives on that side of the street, the marsh flows by their houses. Well, yeah. So that's not ironclad.
Plus, there's a rule among us serial killers, which is you don't crap in your own nest.
That's true.
Yeah.
We are gonna die at the end of this episode. This is never gonna reach air. The problem with saying that Hackett is responsible for it, if anything, at least for Shannon, if not all of these murders, is who would have to be in cahoots with him?
Who?
His wife.
Why?
Because she would know if he's going out at weird hours of the night and then coming home covered in dirt from digging a shallow grave.
Why?
He was just out doing a little midnight gardening.
You have a wife? Do you come home late?
Yeah.
Does she wake up?
Yeah.
100% of the time?
Most of the time. But you know what else? If I'm digging, you know what happens? I've got dirt all over me.
Yeah.
The other problem is that for him, this is a sandy area. For him to be able to navigate to drag a body out and then dig a ditch, the problem that I have is that Hackett he stopped to help somebody. This is many, many years ago. He stopped to help somebody who was in a car accident. He himself was then hit by another motorist, and he lost one of his legs.
Oh, okay, so he only has the one leg. Okay.
Yeah, he only has one leg. He has a prosthetic, and he gets around on it well enough that a lot of people don't know unless they see him in shorts that he's got a prosthetic. But still, that doesn't make navigating, that kind of terrain easy.
I'm going to give you some pushback on his wife had to have known. I mean, I presume that they have big, nice houses in this area, right? It's not like your house. I've been to your house. It's small. Right?
Thanks, but yes.
I mean, and it's fine. It's lovely.
Actually, but I've been on Street View in these little towns, and they're actually not enormous mansions or anything.
No, I'm not asking for an enormous mansion,
huge.
but they're twice the size of Steve's house, say, even twice the size of your house.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Not an enormous mansion, but a big enough house that you could come in. There's 2 full bathrooms, right? You come in, you shower, you clean off, you throw your wash in the laundry, you fall asleep on the couch with the football game on, and your wife comes down and says, "Oh, did you fall asleep in front of the TV again?" And you say, "Yeah, I guess I must have."
The reason that I say his wife had to know, at least with Shannon, is if indeed she came over, and this is what
if she came over, probably.
Well, no, this is for the people who say that he killed her and he must have dumped her behind his house in the marsh that then carried her away. Is that she had to have been in his house for some period of time. At which point, if she was as panicked as everybody says she was, she would have been screaming, and his wife could not have slept and ignored that.
Okay, here's the next question. I have lots of questions on this.
Okay.
How do you know the wife was home?
Because she said she was.
Okay. Oh, okay. How do you know the wife wasn't on Ambien or Xanax or any of the other?
None of that was
that will
that's never
totally knock
specified, so
people
I can't
out.
say.
Right. So I mean, that's the thing.
Here's my problem. Hackett.
go back and
well, no, and
Yeah.
the thing with Hackett, the guy is subtle as a T-Rex. I mean,
I don't
he's
think he did it.
Yeah.
no, I mean,
I
he's
don't
just-
either.
That-
he doesn't have the wherewithal to
Yeah.
pull this off.
Well,
I
the
just
thing-
think your arguments against him are kind of like.
Well, he's made enemies. I mean, there's all kinds of. Have you ever seen those people who are in a homeowners association and they are on the board and there's all kinds of political crap going on back and forth?
Oh yeah.
He was involved in that for years in this community, and he's made a lot of enemies. And while I don't use that as a reason to excuse him, I use that as a reason to think that people just say that guy's an a-hole and it's his fault.
Yeah. The thing about it is too is that there's not a shred of evidence that he murdered Shannon.
Yeah.
There really is not a shred of evidence, and much less. And Shannon, in my opinion, is completely unconnected
Yeah.
to the rest
Well,
of the bodies.
and to be 100% honest, there's not even a shred of evidence that he even really,
Met her.
that he met her.
yeah, there's not much.
Right.
There's not that much evidence of that either.
There's
yeah.
not.
I mean, actually,
It's so weak.
I will say that there's a little bit of evidence because he himself is kind of, if you would call this incriminating evidence, that he sort of incriminated himself a little bit by making the phone call to her mother.
That's the
you know.
only bit of evidence is that, and that could be evidence for like.
Yeah,
anything.
and Brewer said that they had met, and
Brewer was a
and-
good friend of Hackett and
Yeah,
said,
and-
"Hey,
Yeah, but even so what? I mean, yeah,
so he sold them drugs."
yeah,
Okay.
Let's move forward
Okay.
yeah,
because we're going to move on to who you just talked about, which is Brewer.
Okay.
yeah.
Which people say Brewer's responsible. Absolutely no evidence other than the fact that Shannon came to his house, potentially did a bunch of drugs, possibly had sex with him, and then ran from his house in a possibly drug-induced panic, possibly not, but she left his house.
Possibly
and that was
frightened.
it.
Yeah, but
But there's nothing to connect him to all the other murders.
Yeah.
Well, now-
I mean, even if he did somehow kill Shannon, he probably's not a serial killer.
Probably not.
That would have
Not
been like a super bungled case.
Well, it would have been. He would have had actually a very positive incentive to not let her run off into the night. Because if he had actually stashed all these bodies
wouldn't have called Pac.
all around near, he wouldn't have called Pac.
He also wouldn't have just turned around and walked back into his own dang house.
He also wouldn't have let her out of the house to begin with, because her running off sparked this whole thing.
Yeah.
And if he had bodies stashed all around his house, I mean not near his house, but all
But
around
all
the
over
house,
in the area, yeah.
obviously he would have just killed her. So yeah, and so Brewer.
Yeah, why
now.
not treat her like all the others? So,
But how strong a contender is Brewer out there on the internet?
oh, he's for the most part completely disregarded.
Okay.
You will see the occasional. It's got to be Brewer because he's this thing happened with Shannon, but for the most part, nobody even takes it as a serious theory.
No, and why would you? But,
Yeah. So let's move to my next theory. This is one that we kind of talked about this a little bit, or insinuated this a little bit when it comes to the multiple serial killers, but I'm not even going to say this is multiple serial killers. This theory is a dumping grounds for a cleaner. If you have ever watched Reservoir Dogs, you remember Harvey Keitel's character?
No, you're thinking Pulp Fiction.
Oh, Pulp Fiction. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's Pulp Fiction.
Do you know what I think of always is Boondock Saints?
Yeah. So
Cleaner
you got the cleaner, the guy who comes in, you got a bunch of bodies, and he gets rid of them. Okay, well, let's not even take it to that fun Hollywood level, but let's just say there's somebody he's just kind of, hey, so I don't know what to do. I killed this hooker. What do I do? And he's like, give me $1,000 and I'll take care of it. And he just starts sprinkling bodies all over the area. And it's like, okay, well, this one spot, I always put them in burlap. This place, I hack them up. So that connected murders become disconnected, or disconnected murders appear to be connected. I mean, I know that I am reaching on this, but it's like, why can't it be that as to anything else?
I like it, except for that it takes a certain kind of
Psychopath?
messed up human being to hack bodies up and
Well-
disperse those parts.
It could be, a combo of a cleaner and a serial killer. I mean,
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I think yeah, okay, these people are murdered, they're strangled and they're wrapped in burlap, but I just keep thinking, like, that's
such an attention to
irreverent-
detail.
It's a reverent way to deal with that, and
I'm not
give
even
them a
sure.
shroud
I'm not sure there was any
and
reverence there. Seriously, you
But
know.
more so than hacking up their bodies
Oh,
and
yeah.
dropping it in like 5 different places.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, I mean, at least there's some care taken to this body.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I think that you're assigning care to something which is, I don't want to get gooey matter in the back of my trunk.
Or I don't
as
wanna
simple as
look
that.
at
Could be
their
that.
faces.
Yeah, or they were out of blue tarps at the Ace Hardware, so I got burlap wrap
Right.
instead. I
I mean,
mean,
there's also such a thing as like serial killers who like go into this like blind rage and kill, and then basically like come to afterwards, right? And then realize like, oh god, I just did something awful.
I got a body I got to get rid of now.
And they just don't know what to do or how to deal with it, so they wrap it up so they don't have to look at it.
oh yeah, you see this in movies. Oh God, it happened again.
Yeah.
What do I do? I've got to dispose. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it could be any of that. The last theory that we have here is, I don't know how to describe this one, except I see it listed in some places, and I refer to it as the Party Dudes, which is, did either of you see that movie, Very Bad Things?
No, didn't see that.
Okay, it's it's a movie with Jeremy Piven in it, and he's with a prostitute, and she accidentally dies while they're copulating.
God, I hate it when that happens.
And it starts this chain of things, but it's like, oh, well, I hired a prostitute, and she happened to die. We've got to get rid of the body. Well, this weirdly ties into that, because this theory says that, well, there's these guys and they use the island and they like to party and they invite prostitutes over, and occasionally a prostitute dies and we got to handle it. So we just, one of us is responsible for getting rid of them. And I mean, I know you had